Hello, everybody. My name is Nicole Fuller. I'm a registered dietitian, a nutritionist with the Valley Hospital, and I am going to be talking about a healthy, balanced diet for life. Thank you so much for watching this presentation. I'm so happy to have you all here. So without that, let's start the presentation. So I do like to start each presentation with just a little bit about me so you kind of get an idea of who's speaking to you. Um, First things first, I'm a proud graduate of the University of Connecticut. I have to say, go Huskies, um, I'm an avid fan of everything, but especially their football team. I mean, their basketball team. Oh my goodness, basketball, not football. Well, football's good too, but basketball for sure. Um, Secondly, I've been a dietitian for well over 20 years now, and it freaks me out a little bit more every time I say that, but I've been practicing in the field of dietetics for over 20 years now. I've worked in many different areas, long-term care, acute care. Um, I've worked in a dialysis center and doing community work, like speaking engagements, such as the one I am doing today. As you could see, I am also a mom of 3 boys, so I have a very busy life. But in my spare time, I do definitely enjoy things like running, hiking, reading, Spartan races, which are kind of like obstacle course races. I also enjoy traveling. And in my very, very spare time, my husband would say that I do enjoy napping. So I would say spare time napping is included. So let's get started. I just wanted to kind of briefly go over the outline of what this program is about. We're going to go over the leading cause of death in the United States, some stroke risk factors. If you haven't ever heard of My Plate, you will definitely be familiar with it by the end of this presentation. We're going to go over how to use a nutrition facts label so that you're able to make more informed drink and food choices, touch on what nutrients we want to get more of in our diet and ones to try and eat less of, some nutrition culprits, a little bit about physical activity, and then I'm going to give you a slide that lists some other resources that you can go to if you would like more information. So I wanted to kind of go over the leading causes of death in the US, and this is according to the CDC. Now, I've had to update this because, as you can see, number 3 there, COVID-19 has made the list. So the top, here are 8 leading causes of death in the US. Number 1 is heart disease, cancer, number 2, COVID-19, 3, accidents, 4, and here we have stroke sitting at number 5, chronic lower respiratory diseases, Alzheimer's disease, as well as diabetes. So I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what we're dealing with as far as what is the main causes of death in the US. When it comes to, stroke risk factors, there are some controllable stroke risk factors, and I think it's kind of important to go over those. And you might say, well, of course, but some people might not know this. So number 1 is high blood pressure, or we also call it hypertension. Smoking is controllable. Diabetes, through, diet and weight loss, we can control our diabetes. Diet overall, physical activity, obesity, high cholesterol, and heart disease. And as a dietitian, I'm looking at this list through my dietitian, lens, and a lot of these risk factors can be controlled by diet overall. So the number 1 goal I would like people to focus on is just eating a variety of nutritious foods every day. Okay, the focus being on nutritious. You want to include healthy food groups, healthy foods from all the different food groups. You want to hydrate healthfully, meaning making wise beverage choices, preferably zero or low calorie beverages. We want to learn how to read a nutrition facts panel, practice portion control, and of course, at the end of the day, we do want to take time and enjoy the food that we're eating. Okay. So my plate, I mentioned at the beginning that if you didn't know what my plate was at the start of this presentation, that by the end, you will definitely know what my plate is. My plate is, back in the day, we used to have the food guide pyramid. Even when I started my career as a dietitian back in school, we had the food guide pyramid. The USDA has kind of done away with the food guide pyramid. Instead, we use my plate. And I will give you the website for that at the end of this on the resource page. With my plate, it's focusing on choosing more whole fruits rather than, fruit juice, for instance, varying the vegetables that you eat. I mean, in general, we do want to eat vegetables, but having a variety of different vegetables is important because you might have heard the term eat the rainbow. And that's because things like vegetables and fruit, for that matter, they're come in a variety of different colors, and each color has important factors to it, okay? So it's important to get a variety of different fruits and vegetables, especially in your diet, to get benefits from each of those colors of vegetables. When it comes to grains, so when it comes to rice, pasta, bread, for instance, we want to choose whole grains over the white refined grains. When it comes to protein, we want to vary our protein. What does that mean? It means, if you're someone who likes meat and potatoes, maybe switching it up and switching from red meat to chicken, fish, or maybe choosing protein that isn't coming from an animal at all, like tofu, for instance, stepping out of the box and trying something different. If you're someone who drinks milk or has yogurt or cheese, you want to move from full fat or 2% to low fat or fat-free milk. 1% is considered low fat, while 2%, even though it sounds like it's lower in fat, it is a little bit, but we want to switch all the way to 1% or fat-free milk, yogurt, or cheeses. We want to try and limit the amount of sodium in our diet, as well as saturated fats and added sugars. And we'll go over a little bit more of that as we continue on. So here you could say, this is what my plate looks like. Okay, and here actually right away, you don't even have to wait to the end. You can see the website right here, choosemyplate.gov. Even if you put my plate into the search engine, this website should come up. So this is how we want our plate to look like. If it doesn't look like that for every meal, that's fine. Just know that these are the food groups we want to focus on: vegetables, fruits, grains, protein, and dairy. Okay, this is where our diet should consist of mostly, from these food groups. So we want to focus on making half of our plate fruits and vegetables. Quite honestly, I tell people half your plate at lunch and dinner should be focused on vegetables, because in the morning, most people aren't having vegetables. So maybe have fruit in the morning with your breakfast, have another piece of fruit somewhere else throughout the day as a snack maybe, and then half your plate at lunch and dinner will be vegetables. And again, we want to vary our vegetable choices to make sure we're getting a variety of different vitamins, nutrients, phytonutrients, which give those vegetables a beautiful color. And we want to vary our fruit as well. Okay. Now, when it comes to dairy, and I'm going to go back a little bit, dairy's kind of, off to the side here. You might not have it with every meal, but the low fat or fat-free dairy choices from milk, yogurt, and cheese. If you don't, if you're someone who's lactose intolerant or can't tolerate dairy, you can always choose calcium fortified non-dairy products, whether it's soy milk, oat milk, as long as you try and choose something that is calcium fortified. But when it comes to milk, cheese, or yogurt, say you have a glass of milk with breakfast, or you put milk in your cereal, you can have a low-fat string cheese as a snack. and then maybe yogurt with some fruit later in the day. That's how you're getting some dairy in and some fruit at the same time, just to give you some ideas of some options. Grains. I know people are tend to be on this low carb kick. Our bodies do need carbohydrates. The problem or the issue more so is what kind of carbohydrates we're choosing, okay? Grains are part of the carbohydrates, so it's like breads, cereals, pasta, rice, you might have heard of quinoa, couscous, cereals, if I didn't mention that already. You want to try, you want a quarter of your plate. Let's go back here. A quarter of your plate, breakfast, lunch, and dinner should be grains. We want to focus on whole grains, okay? And remember, portion sizes matter. So it's not half of your plate being spaghetti or a whole plate being spaghetti. A quarter of your plate is your spaghetti, preferably whole wheat spaghetti. Half of your plate would be, say broccoli, and a quarter of your plate would be your protein, which will be, well, let's say turkey meatballs, for instance. So it's the type of grains we're choosing and the portion sizes. Whole grains provide us with lots of vitamins, minerals, and fiber. And fiber is so important. Okay, that's another reason why we want to make sure we're getting plenty of vegetables in our diet and fruit. They both contain fiber. Fiber has been shown to help keep us feeling fuller longer. It has been shown to help with blood sugar control. So if diabetes is something you're dealing with, it's been helped to lower blood sugar, help with cholesterol, lower incidence of certain types of cancer, the more fiber in our diet. And if you're someone that wants to lose weight, fiber helps keep us feeling fuller longer. So if you're feeling fuller longer, you're likely to consume less calories overall. So choosing whole grain breads for sandwiches or for toast, if you're making pancakes from scratch, why not start, maybe you're using 2 cups of flour. One will be whole wheat flour, 1 cup will be the regular flour, and then try and switch over to whole grain. Whole grain cereals, oatmeal, for instance, you could cook it with some low fat milk and add some fruit. And never be scared to try grains that you might not be familiar with. So if quinoa is something that you're familiar with, why not try that? Or couscous. There are so many types of wonderful grains out there to be added to your diet. Rice, choosing brown rice over white rice. I know some of these things you might, not enjoy, but trying to incorporate them into your diet is a great way to be making healthier food choices. Now, when it comes to protein, if you have forgotten a quarter of your plate, you want it to be protein. Now, protein, most people automatically are assuming chicken, beef, fish, pork, what have you. Don't be afraid to try plant-based protein too. That includes beans, peas, and lentils, for instance. Lentils have protein, they have fiber, they even contain some iron. Eggs, that's a good source of protein. I always recommend also when choosing protein, if meat is something that you do enjoy eating, you want to choose leaner cuts of meat, or when it comes to chicken, removing the skin of the chicken to make it lower in fat, a little bit heart healthier. Um, uh, when you're eating eggs, if you're somebody that's worried about cholesterol, maybe you remove the yolk, because the yolk is where the cholesterol is. The egg whites are perfectly fine. Trying to include more seafood in your diet. They're a great source, especially something like salmon or tuna. They have omega-3 fatty acids, which have been shown to be really good for heart health. You can always go to choosemyplate.gov/myplateplan, and you can enter on that website. You can even put in your height, your age, your gender, your activity level, and it will kind of give you an idea of how many servings from each food group you should be aiming to eat, whether it be for weight maintenance or for weight loss. So it is a really wonderful resource. So overall, in general, what do we want to try and eat more of in our diet? What do we want to think about increasing? Well, legumes, that would be beans, peas, and lentils. They are they contain protein. There's lots of health benefits associated with legumes, beans, peas, and lentils. And there's many ways you can incorporate these into your diet. Beans, for instance, you could put them on a salad. You can, if you're making soups and stews, I mean, maybe in the summer you might not be eating soups and stews, but you can go ahead and try and adding beans, or doing like a bean chili instead of meat chili. You want to try and eat more whole grains over white refined grains. White refined grains, they remove a lot of the nutrition from them, whereas whole grains, again, you're getting the vitamins, minerals, fiber. Trying to include some nuts and seeds in your diet, because nuts and seeds, a lot of them have the healthy omega-3 fatty acids, which are very good for heart health. They also provide a little bit of protein and fiber. When choosing dairy, again, low-fat or fat-free dairy, lean protein. So if you're someone who eats red meat, now I would recommend limiting your red meat. Maybe it should be an once in a while thing. So maybe once every 2 weeks, maybe once a week, especially if you have high cholesterol. If that's something you're worried about, I would definitely avoid red meat. If you absolutely are someone that has to have red meat every once in a while, you want to, when it comes to ground beef, do the 90% lean ground beef, at least 90% lean. If you're looking at red meat, you can see whether or not it has a lot of white rippled through it. If there's a lot of white running through it, that's what we call marbling, and that is fat. And that type of fat is high in saturated fat, which is not good for heart health. And of course, we want to aim to eat more fruits and vegetables and a variety of different colors, as I mentioned before. Okay, so fiber. You heard me mention fiber. I can do an entire presentation on fiber alone, which I've actually done before. Fiber is almost like a nutrient that we don't talk enough about. Fiber helps to bind cholesterol in our GI tracts and our gastrointestinal tracts, helps to rid our body from cholesterol, which is so important. And especially, again, if you're someone who has high cholesterol. Recommendations for men: 38 grams of fiber per day, 30 grams if you're over 50. For women, 25 grams of fiber a day, or 21 grams if you're over 50 a day, 50 years old. Okay, the issue is most Americans, the average intake is somewhere between 10 and 15 grams. So we are definitely not there, okay? We have a long way to go. We want to try, again, look at our plate, a quarter of it fruit, a quarter of it vegetables, or like what I like to say, half vegetables at lunch and dinner. You want to choose whole grains over white refined grains. When it comes to bread, I say look for bread that has at least 3 grams of fiber per slice. That's kind of what I go for. Adding more beans and legumes to your diet, and legumes, remember, are beans, peas, and lentils. Lentils, some people are like, I don't really know what they are. I don't know what to do with them. Well, if you go to Trader Joe's, I know there's one in Westwood and there's one in Paramus. In the refrigerated vegetable aisle, they already have a that you could buy a container of pre-cooked lentils. You can just heat them up, or you can add them cold to a salad. I find them delicious. And nuts and seeds do also contain fiber. Remember, very important. So when it comes to fiber, like, what are we thinking of? So fruit, one serving would be a cup of fresh fruit, or a half a cup of dried. Apples, berries especially are a good source of fiber. When we're eating fruit, if you can tolerate it, it's better to include the skin, because the skin usually has more fiber in it. And dried fruit. So, putting some craisins on a salad, or snacking on some raisins, maybe. Vegetables, one serving would be a cup of raw vegetables, or half a cup of cooked. That would be a serving, making sure you're getting enough fiber that way. You can and you can eat them raw, you can eat it cooked, any way you prefer. It doesn't matter to me as long as you're trying to include more vegetables in your diet. Beans and legumes. This is what I think most people don't know what a serving would be. It would be about a half a cup cooked. So, and if you don't want to cook beans, you can absolutely buy canned beans. You want to rinse them well. It'll decrease the sodium content. So, half a cup of lentils, black beans, chickpeas, any kind of beans you want. I'm game, whatever you want to choose. And then, of course, whole grains. So one serving of whole grains, what is that? It's like a half a cup of brown rice, a half a cup of whole wheat pasta, one slice of bread. We want to choose, again, brown rice, oatmeal, whole wheat bread, wheat bran, bulgur. These are just some ideas when it comes to grains. Next up, how to read a food label. You can't automatically assume that everybody knows how to read a food label. So I want to kind of go over how to do it. Now, on the left, you will see the original food label. On the right is what our new food label looks like. So I want you to go ahead and take a look at that. At the top, obviously, it says nutrition facts. Right under that, it says 8 servings per container. So whatever this item is, there are 8 servings inside. One serving size listed here is 2/3 of a cup. Now, this is a made-up item. So 2/3 of a cup is considered one serving. What's listed below, the calories, the amount of fat, cholesterol, sodium, all of that is in that 2/3 of a cup. But if you ate the entire container, you would have to multiply that by 8, okay? Because there's 8 servings of 2/3 of a cup. Now, I hope we're all following along here. So what does that also mean? You don't want to just look at calories. Looking at total fat, you want to look at saturated fat. Maybe you're interested in the amount of cholesterol. If you're having 2/3 of cup of whatever this item is, in 2/3 a cup, there's 4 grams of dietary fiber, okay? There's 12 grams of sugar and 10 grams of added sugar, meaning whatever this item is, there's been 10 grams of added sugar added to it. Okay, so this is just kind of an idea of how to read a food label. And again, this is a made up product, but just so you can see how to go about reading it. Okay, we're going to continue looking at it. Okay, so at the food label and getting into it a little bit more. Okay, so on the left we have the nutrients. It tells you what's in it. Okay, so the fat, cholesterol, sodium, carbohydrates, the protein. On the right, it's giving you the percent daily value. This is the percent based on a 2,000 calorie diet. Now, some people need less than 2,000 calories. Some people need more. This is just what they base the labels on, okay, a 2,000 calorie diet. But a rule of thumb, when you're looking at the percent daily value, if something is 20% or more in that serving, okay, so let's look here at added sugars. In 2/3 of a cup, it has 10 grams of added sugar and it's at 20% of the daily value. That 20% means it's high in that. It's high in added sugar. If it's 5% or less, or under 5%, it would have been low in that. So sometimes you'll see a claim on the front of an item that says high in dietary fiber. That would mean it's probably got 20% or more in the one serving of fiber. So if you want to look, you're watching your sodium intake here. This item has 160 milligrams, 7%. That's not necessarily low. It's better than 20%. But if you're concerned, you can always look at it and be like, okay, it's 7%. It's better than being 15 to 20%. But if it were 5%, that would even be great because they can market it as being low. Okay. Nutrients we want to get less of. So if you're looking at the label, okay, right here, saturated fat, which you will find right under the total fat, trans fat, which is the trans saturated fat. That's something you want to get less of, sodium, and added sugars. Okay. So I just want to let you know that trans fat, this item says it has 0 trans fat. Transaturated fat is not good for heart health either, but you just want to be aware that a label can put is that there's 0 trans fat in it if there's less than 0.5 grams per serving. If you read the ingredient list and it says anything, and there's anything listed there as hydrogenated oil or partially hydrogenated oil, if you see hydrogenated oil, you can be certain that there's trans fat in it, but they can put 0 if it's less than 0.5 grams. Okay, so can be a little bit confusing. You can always glance again at the ingredient list, and trans fat is not good for heart health. It's basically a liquid fat that they turn into a solid fat in a laboratory somewhere. It makes an item more shelf stable, so it can stay on the shelf longer. Think of something like Twinkies or, Oreos, for instance. They might be, and something that lasts longer on the shelf will usually have some kind of hydrogenated oil in it. We also want to, in general, aim to eat less sweets in general, less candy, less added sugars. We want to eat less red meat, which we discussed before. We want to eat less sodium. You can always read the nutrition facts panel. Again, you want to look for something that has less than 20%. If you really want to go low, I would say 5% or less per serving, or you can just choose something that is 140 milligrams or less per serving. Eating more fresh fruits, eating more foods made at home than eating out, because you're in control of what you're putting in the food, adding to the food, and you're in charge of what foods you're choosing. I mean, I guess when you're going out to eat, you're in charge of the foods you're choosing, but not how it's necessarily prepared or how much salt they're using, how much butter, those types of things. If you are going out to eat, you can always aim to eat lower sodium options or lower fat options. You can have dressings or sauces put on the side. Never be afraid to ask your server to do, something a little above and beyond. A lot of times they will say yes, and the answer is always no if you never ask. Okay, so the facts on sodium. So according to the American Heart Association, eating less sodium or salt, we can use those interchangeably sometimes, can reduce your risk of heart disease as well as stroke and high blood pressure. So of course we want to lower the intake of salt. Conversely, a diet high in sodium-rich foods may increase our risk, okay? So foods high in sodium include packaged snacks, canned foods, most of the processed foods out there, fast foods, lunch meat, breads, rolls, pizzas, in general, lots of snack foods, okay? So now that you know how to read a food label and you buy something packaged, you can see if it is high in sodium. More on sodium, okay. Processed foods is by far the largest contributor to a lot of sodium in our diets, okay? You can see here at the salt label to the left, 77% of sodium comes from processed and prepared foods, okay? It's not a lot that we use with cooking or while we're, the foods that most foods have sodium in it naturally. It's from those processed prepared foods. So it goes back to trying to choose more fresh, homemade meals where you're in charge, okay? We want to eat less than 2,300 milligrams a day. 2,300 milligrams is about a teaspoon of salt. Americans, the average is about 3,400 milligrams. So on average, each American the intake of sodium is more than we need. Other nutrition culprits that we want to limit: saturated fat. This is a fat that's solid at room temperature. It contributes to high cholesterol, artery blockages. We want to try and keep it to less than 7 to 10% of our overall calories when it comes to reducing our risk of heart disease. So solid fat at room temperature, that's mostly animal fats or like palm oil, coconut Oil, that can be solid too. We want to limit the trans-saturated fats. Again, we discussed that a little bit earlier. It can contribute to heart disease, blocking our arteries, increasing LDL cholesterol, which is considered quote unquote the bad cholesterol. Your body makes enough cholesterol for what we need, for our physiological and structural functions of the body. So overall with cholesterol, we want to limit it to less than 200 to 300 milligrams a day for, better cholesterol control. If you're someone who, has high cholesterol, I usually say to people, limit whole eggs to 3 to 4 a week, because that's usually a question I get quite often. Egg whites, again, not a problem. It's the yolks that have the cholesterol. When it comes to physical activity, I really recommend talking to your doctor before starting any new fitness regimen. So if you're not currently working out, definitely speak to your doctor before engaging in any physical activity. The recommendations for adults, however, is to have at least 150 minutes a week of moderate intensity physical activity, aerobic physical activity, or 75 minutes a week of vigorous intensity physical activity. Again, if you're nowhere near that, I don't recommend just waking up tomorrow, starting a physical fitness routine. Always speak to your doctor first, but I can't, in good conscience talk about overall, health and well-being with nutrition without encouraging some physical activity. And as I said at the beginning, I wanted to give you some additional resources in case I didn't cover something in here. Obviously, the American Stroke Association is a wonderful website. That's www.stroke.org. You can kind of, write down anyone that you think you might find more interesting to look at. I definitely have to plug my website, not my personal website, but my academy that I'm affiliated with as a dietitian, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics at www.eatright.org. Again, all these websites are wonderful, but I would check that one out for resources. Lots of these have diet recommendations and meal ideas and recipes, especially myplate.gov. Love that website for sure. And let's see. Also, if you feel like you need more information on an individual level, you can always consult a registered dietitian nutritionist. At the Valley Hospital, we do have outpatient dietitians. You can always make an appointment with them. They're located over at the Luckow facility in Paramus, behind the Fashion Center, if that's what people still call it. I don't know. So you can call 201-634-5371 to make an appointment. You do need a prescription or referral from your doctor to see a dietitian, but it's a great way to get one-on-one individualized information on diet. So in conclusion, every little bit of nutrition is a step in the right direction. So I don't expect everyone to, suddenly eat this way. Small changes over time is what we're looking for. Always use credible sources of information like the ones I just listed, and get familiar with your nutrition facts panel because it does help you a lot. Now, again, you can contact the Valley Hospital. The phone number is here. It's a Recipe for Life is the outpatient dietitian program over there. And the number is 201-634-5371. And I'm going to just answer some questions that I have here, which is interesting because I get these questions quite often. The first question is, does it matter if you eat cooked, raw, or frozen vegetables? So my philosophy on this is I want people to eat vegetables however they're going to eat them, unless they're fried or soaked in, creamy sauces. So if you want to cook them, bake them, roast them, steam them, saute them. I'm fine with cooking. Cooking in general does denature some of the vitamins and minerals, but if you're not eating vegetables to begin with, I want you to eat them however you're going to get them in your body. Raw vegetables are perfectly fine. When it comes to frozen vegetables, there are some times that frozen vegetables can be more nutritious than what you might find in the produce section of your grocery, because the frozen vegetables are picked at their peak of ripeness and flash frozen. So sometimes they can be a little bit more nutritious. But again, in general, I just tell people eat your vegetables. Again, half your plate, lunch and dinner. Okay, let's see. The next question. Are nuts a good snack, and which ones should I eat? So obviously, through the program, you saw me mention nuts sometimes. Nuts absolutely can be fit into a diet perfectly. They do contain, a lot of them contain very healthy fats, the unsaturated fat, like omega-3 fatty acids, which are good for heart health. They contain some fiber and even some protein, and they can be inexpensive. The only thing I say when it comes to nuts, nuts are calorically dense, meaning they do have a lot of calories for a small portion. So I would make sure you're portioning it out, maybe a quarter of a cup a few times a week. Trying to choose the low salt or unsalted nuts would be better to keep the sodium down. And when it comes to nuts, whichever you really prefer, walnuts are good, almonds, macadamia nuts, even peanuts. Peanuts are considered a legume, but they kind of go in this category too. Again, it's just a small portion and unsalted. Okay, so next question. Can you get all the necessary nutrients without can you get all the necessary nutrients without eating meat? Without eating meat, and how do you make sure you're getting all you need if you're a vegetarian or vegan? So you can get all the necessary nutrients by eating without eating meat. You just want to make sure you're eating a well-balanced diet. So that means including other source, and most people are thinking protein. Most vegetarians, vegans can get enough protein in their diet, but you want to make sure you're getting enough, a variety of different vitamins, minerals, fiber. Just like with any quote unquote diet, you can be deficient in certain things. So a vegan, I believe Oreos, for instance, are vegan. Most bread is considered vegan. So if you're living on Oreos and bread, you're definitely going to be missing out on nutrients. So you have to have a balanced diet, if that makes sense. Vegans are very, very strict. There is no animal protein whatsoever. They don't even eat honey, nothing that comes or that's been touched by animals. So when it comes to being a vegan, they are almost exclusively deficient in, they are almost always deficient in vitamin B12, because vitamin B12 is almost exclusively in animals. So that one might be one nutrient that would be of concern. There definitely are vitamins, minerals that are of concern, but you need to be eating a well-balanced diet. If you're someone who is vegan and you're worried about that, again, you can always reach out to make an appointment with one of our outpatient dietitians to make sure you're getting the nutrients you do need. Oh, and with that, one question is, how do I feel about supplements? Well, again, if you're vegan, you might very well need a vitamin B12 supplement. However, this is something I don't like to give a blanket statement of everybody should be taking an XYZ supplement. We are all different. We all have different nutrient needs and deficiencies. If you're concerned about a specific deficiency, you can always talk to your doctor about checking your labs. I would say one that I would be concerned with most people is vitamin D. That tends to be low with people, but again, I wouldn't outright say you should be taking a vitamin D supplement without checking your vitamin D levels. So supplements, I'm fine with them as long as that there's a reason for taking them. So I hope that answered that question. And it looks like there are no more questions at this time. I appreciate you listening to this presentations. And again, if you have any concerns individually, you could reach out to A Recipe for Life at the Valley Hospital at the phone number listed below. Thank you so much.